My brother pointed behind me and smiled. The staff table is in back. This dinner is for people who actually contributed. His friends laughed while I stood in the bridesmaid dress I had paid for. I asked, "Are you sure you want to say that in front of witnesses?" before he could answer. The venue coordinator asked about an unpaid balance. He turned to Grandma for help. She opened the wedding contract, studied the receipts, then looked at her attorney, who withdrew $84,000 from Leah's trust fund. My mother dropped her champagne, but my brother's face told me the missing money wasn't the only secret inside that contract. My name is Leah Whitmore, and at 29, I had spent most of my life hearing the same sentence whenever my brother needed more. Leah will be fine. I lived in Raleigh and worked as a senior contract administrator for a hospital construction company. My job was built around contracts, payment schedules, change orders, and one basic rule: money did not become authorized just because someone had already spent it. At home. That rule seemed to disappear whenever Nolan was involved. My brother was 35, a luxury real estate agent in Charlotte, and the family success story. He drove a Range Rover, posted videos from million-dollar listings, and talked about commission checks like they were already in the bank. I was the spreadsheet sister, single, careful, practical, the one expected to understand why Nolan always needed help first. Our grandfather, Thomas Whitmore, had left each of us a separate trust worth $180,000. Nolan received control of his at 30. Within 5 years, most of it was gone. He used $72,000 on a condo he later sold at a loss, paid off business debt, upgraded his car, traveled, and spent the rest maintaining the image that he had built everything himself. My trust was different. I still had 5 months before my 30th birthday, when control would pass directly to me. The balance was $176,900. Mom served as trustee until then. Grandma Evelyn was the trust protector, which meant she could remove Mom or demand records. But she did not approve everyday transactions. I had never requested a withdrawal. I was saving the trust for a down payment on a modest townhouse in Raleigh. I already had neighborhoods bookmarked and a folder of mortgage estimates on my laptop. I trusted Mom to leave the money alone. I also agreed to be one of Paige's bridesmaids because I thought Nolan's wedding might give us a chance to feel like siblings again. By the week of the ceremony, I had spent $6,180 on the dress, alterations, shoes, hair, makeup, hotel, shower, and bachelorette trip. No one called that contributing. 3 weeks before the wedding, Nolan called me. "The big pieces are covered," he said. "I just need you to put the final 15,600 on your card." $15,600. Grandma already handled most of it. I sat up. What exactly did Grandma pay for the silence on his end lasted just long enough to make me afraid of the answer. Nolan recovered first. "It came from family money," he said. "Stop auditing your own brother." "I'm asking because you said Grandma paid. She helped. Mom handled the transfer." "None of this concerns you." He wanted me to put $15,600 on my credit card and wait for repayment from wedding gifts. I laughed once. "You still owe $46,000 on cards. That is not your business. You just made it my business by asking for another loan." His voice hardened. "You're single. What do you even need that much cash for right now? My life does not become less expensive because it does not include a husband." I reminded him that I had already spent more than $6,000 to stand beside Paige. I was saving for a home. I was not financing the final stretch of a wedding that already cost more than most houses in my neighborhood. Nolan called me jealous. Then he said, "Fine, but do not act surprised when people notice who supported us and who did not." Mom called 20 minutes later. "Nolan only gets one wedding," she said. "You still have years to buy a house." The sentence lodged in my chest. What does my house have to do with his wedding? Nothing. I am saying you are stable. Your brother is under pressure. What did you transfer for him? She went quiet. Then Dad took the phone. "Let your brother have one day." "Leah." I asked the question again. No one answered it. Over the next 2 weeks, Nolan told relatives I had refused to contribute. He told Paige I resented their marriage. He told Dad I wanted the reception to fail. What I did not know was that he had already emailed the planner about a family trust contribution. He had sent Mom the vendor totals, the wire instructions, and the exact amount needed from each transfer. One message later, recovered from his phone, read, "Once the vendors are paid." "Grandma will not blow up a wedding," Mom replied. "Leah turns 30 in February. She will be furious. But she will not take family to court." On the morning of the ceremony, the planner reminded Nolan that I was seated at family table 2. He told her to move me. She refused to contribute. He said, "Put her with the vendors." Paige heard about the change and assumed it was only another family argument. After the photographs, I entered the ballroom and searched the escort cards. My name was gone from the guest tables. A new card had been placed at the end of the display. Leah Whitmore, vendor table B. I stared at the card, wondering whether I had misunderstood it. Vendor table B sat behind a partition beside the kitchen doors, with the photographer's assistants, the DJ technician, and 2 floral workers. I was still wearing the dark blue bridesmaid dress I had paid $1,480 for. I found Nolan near the bar with 4 college friends. "Is this a mistake?" I asked, holding up the card. He pointed behind me. "The staff table is in back." "You moved me away from the family." Nolan smiled. "This dinner is for people who actually contributed." His friends laughed. One raised his glass. "At least she still gets fed." I felt every dollar I had spent on that wedding settle in my chest. The dress, the hotel, the shower, the bachelorette trip, the shoes cutting into my heels. I looked at Nolan. "Are you sure you want to say that in front of witnesses for once?" "Stop making everything about you." Before I could answer, the venue coordinator approached with a folder. "We need the final balance before activating the extended bar and late-night services." Nolan's smile disappeared. The unpaid balance was $15,600. He tried one card, declined. He tried another, not enough available credit. Without payment, dinner would still be served. But the band would stop on schedule, the bar would close early, the late-night food would be canceled, and the transportation upgrade would not be released. Nolan turned to Mom. She whispered that there was nothing else she could move that day. Then he crossed the ballroom to Grandma Evelyn. "Grandma, can you cover the final family portion?" "We'll settle it after the honeymoon." Grandma set down her water. "I never agreed to fund this wedding. You already covered most of it." Grandma went still. "I did what she asked the planner for the master contract." Elaine Porter sat beside her. Elaine had handled our family's estate work for 25 years, drafted both trusts, and was also Grandma's longtime friend. She was there as a wedding guest. The planner brought over a thick binder. Grandma opened the payment ledger. 5 wire transfers appeared. $29,500 to the venue, $24,800 to catering, $11,600 to florals, $9,200 to the band, $8,900 to the planner. Grandma added them twice. $84,000. She turned to the confirmations. The sender line read, "Cynthia Whitmore, trustee FBO Leah Whitmore." Grandma looked at Elaine, who withdrew $84,000 from Leah's trust fund. Mom dropped her champagne glass. The room nearest us went silent. "This is not the place," she said. Grandma closed the binder. "You made it the place when you used trust money to pay this contract." I stepped closer and saw my name across every transfer. "You spent my first home on centerpieces." Nolan moved between us. "It was a family advance." Elaine looked directly at him. "Trustee discretion is not personal ownership. Mom said I still had more than $90,000 left. Leaving part of my money does not make taking the rest acceptable." Grandma turned toward Nolan. "Leah contributed more than anyone at your table. She was simply the only person you did not tell." He claimed he had no idea which trust Mom used. Paige stared at him. "Then why did you tell me she had to move it before Leah's birthday?" Paige's question landed harder than the broken glass. Nolan looked at her, then at Mom. Neither answered. Elaine closed the contract binder and said, "No one deletes a message, email, invoice, or bank record. The wedding can continue. The records cannot disappear." I did not grab a microphone or stop dinner. The vendors had done nothing wrong. They had received valid-looking wires from an authorized trustee. The ceremony was over, guests were seated, and I refused to let Nolan turn me into the woman who destroyed a wedding after he had already stolen from me. Grandma refused to pay the remaining $15,600. Dinner was served, but the bar closed on schedule. The band did not play overtime. The late-night food disappeared from the program, and the upgraded transportation was canceled. The wedding went forward. The fiction did not. By the next morning, Elaine had sent preservation notices to the venue, planner, bank, and every vendor listed in the contract. Grandma used her authority as trust protector to freeze the remaining $92,900 and suspend Mom's power to make distributions. A corporate trustee took temporary control. Elaine explained the distinction carefully. Your mother had authority to move trust assets. She told me. She did not have authority to spend them for someone else. The accounting showed exactly how she had done it. Mom sold part of my investment portfolio, moved $84,000 into the trust's checking account, and labeled the transaction First Residence Acquisition Reserve. Then she wired the money directly to Nolan's wedding vendors. In the annual accounting, she planned to describe the payments as housing preparation for me. I stared at that phrase. They used my future house to pay for his wedding, then planned to call the wedding my housing expense. Elaine nodded once. The vendors had no reason to suspect anything. The account was real. Mom was the trustee. The lie was in the purpose. The messages made the intent impossible to deny. Nolan had sent Mom the wire instructions and exact vendor totals. Once the vendors are paid. Grandma won't blow up a wedding, he wrote. Mom replied, Leah turns 30 in February. She'll be furious. But she won't take family to court. Another message from Nolan said, she refused the final balance anyway. Put her in back. He had also emailed the planner. List the trust payment as a family contribution. Do not put Leah's name on anything guests will see. 3 days later. We met in Elaine's conference room. Grandma sat beside me. Dad sat across from us with Mom and Nolan. Nolan spoke first. We were going to pay it back. You did not borrow from me, I said. You spent money you expected me to discover too late. Mom wiped her eyes. I was trying to keep the family together. You kept his wedding together by taking apart my future. Dad said he had not known which trust was being used. You knew Nolan could not afford that wedding, I said. You chose not to ask because silence protected him. Nolan leaned forward. It was still family money. A trust is not a family coupon. He called the staff table incident a joke. I looked directly at him. You did not seat me with the staff because I contributed nothing. You seated me there because you thought I would never learn what you took. Elaine placed the forensic accounting on the table. The amount owed was no longer $84,000. Legal fees, accounting costs, and lost investment growth brought the total to $96,200. Mom went pale. Nolan said he did not have that kind of cash. Then Paige slid a document across the table. She had placed every dollar of their wedding gifts into escrow. Paige's escrow account held $26,000. I'm not spending gifts from people who thought they were helping us start a marriage, she said, not until Leah's money is restored. Nolan stared at her. What about the honeymoon? What about the trust you helped empty Elaine? Gave Mom and Nolan 2 choices. Sign a secured repayment agreement or face a civil claim and a court-ordered accounting. They signed. The wedding gifts went first. Nolan surrendered the Range Rover he had used in every success post. After the lease balance and penalties were resolved, $18,000 went into my trust. Mom transferred $20,000 from her savings and forfeited every dollar of trustee compensation she had received. That left $32,200. She and Nolan agreed to repay it over 36 months. One missed payment would allow Elaine to pursue the balance through court. All communication about money had to go through her office. Grandma removed Mom as trustee permanently. Mom lost access to my statements, documents, and every family trust. A corporate trustee took control until my 30th birthday. Mom called the consequences excessive. I was trying to give Nolan the wedding he deserved. You decided his perfect day mattered more than my future. Nolan's consequences extended beyond the payment plan. Paige discovered he had hidden $46,000 in credit card debt. She moved in with her sister, postponed the honeymoon, and demanded complete financial disclosure, counseling, and a post-nuptial agreement before she would consider living with him again. She apologized to me privately. I believed him because the answer protected the wedding. "You were lied to," I said, "but you also stopped asking questions when the answer became convenient." She nodded. "I know. Dad apologized for telling me not to make a scene. I thought I was protecting the family. You asked the person being humiliated to stay quiet because confronting the person doing it was harder. He did not argue. One of Nolan's friends sent me a message saying he had not known I paid for most of the reception. I left it unanswered. I did not need apologies from people who only recognized my contribution after learning the amount attached to my name. Nolan's luxury posts disappeared, without Dad, Mom, or Paige willing to protect the story. Relatives learned he had contributed only $4,800 to his own wedding. He had given the largest contributor a staff table seat. I gave him a payment schedule. Grandma offered to replace the missing money from her own accounts while Nolan and Mom repaid me. I refused. Replacing it with your money would turn what they did into another gift. She understood. Every dollar returned was labeled restitution. The remaining repayment agreement became an asset of the trust, secured and enforceable. I was not expected to thank anyone for receiving back what had always belonged to me. When I turned 30, control passed directly to me. Several months later, I closed on a 2-bedroom townhouse in Raleigh. It was not extravagant. It had a small office, sunlight across the kitchen floor, and a dining table with 6 chairs I had chosen myself. Grandma brought a potted plant to the housewarming. No check, no speech about rescuing me. Just a plant and a hug. Nolan never came. Instead, he texted, "You got your trust back. What else do you want a brother who would not have spent it? How long are you going to punish us?" Repayment fixes the account. It does not rewrite the wedding. At the next family gathering, Mom noticed the townhouse keys in my hand. "At least everything is back where it belongs," she said. I looked at Nolan. He was still waiting for me to make forgiveness as easy as taking the money had been. "The money is," I said. "The relationships aren't." Nolan crossed his arms. "What else do you want? Nothing from either of you. That is the point." Dad looked down. "Can we start over? Not while anyone still calls what happened a family misunderstanding?" Mom whispered. "But we paid it back." "You repaired the account. You did not repair the trust." Grandma nodded once. Then Leah decides what happens next. I slipped my townhouse keys into my pocket. The money came back. My trust in you did not. Would you have walked out of the reception or stayed to expose everything? Comment below. Subscribe, and stay for more family betrayal and clean financial revenge stories.